The hospital corridors smelled of antiseptic and wilting pumpkins. Someone from the day shift had set up Halloween decorations, plastic skeletons, cotton cobwebs, carved pumpkins with candles inside. Now, at 3 a.m, with most of the lights off, these decorations looked not festive, but eerie. Shadows from artificial spiders crawled across walls. Orange candlelight flickering in the pumpkins created moving silhouettes. I pulled off my blue nurse's scrubs, changing into jeans and a hoodie. The 12-hour shift in the emergency department had drained all my energy. Halloween at the hospital was always intense. Drunk teenagers, party accidents, food poisoning from questionable treats. This year was no exception. I said goodbye to Jennifer at the nurse's station. She was staying until morning, already pouring herself a 3rd cup of coffee. She waved at me without looking up from her computer screen. I left through the side exit where the orderlies usually smoked. The night air was cold, smelling of fallen leaves and distant smoke from bonfires. Somewhere on the street lay the remains of the celebration. Plastic cups, candy wrappers, one child's devil mask with a torn elastic band. The city after Halloween always looked like a battlefield. I always walked home after the night shift. 15 minutes through a quiet residential neighborhood, a familiar route I'd walked hundreds of times. Safe neighborhood, good neighbors, street lighting. I was never afraid. I took out my phone, inserted earbuds, turned on my playlist. Indie rock, something slow and calming. My feet carried me automatically. Right on Maple Street, straight for 3 blocks, left on Oak Avenue, 2 more blocks to home. The streets were empty. House windows dark, only occasionally a forgotten television flickering. Halloween decorations had turned into a ghostly landscape. Plastic tombstones on lawns, gauze cobwebs on trees, pumpkins on porches with extinguished candles inside. In the light of street lamps, it all looked abandoned and dead. The first 2 blocks passed as usual. I thought about coming home, taking a shower, falling into bed. Tomorrow was my day off. I could sleep until noon. On the 3rd block, I noticed him. A figure on the other side of the street. A man in dark clothes, walking in the same direction as me. I didn't think much of it at first. Just another person heading home after the holiday. Maybe from a party, maybe from work, like me. But something about his movements was wrong. He walked too slowly, too smoothly. His steps were soundless even in the silence of night, as if he wasn't walking but gliding across the sidewalk. I took out one earbud to hear my surroundings better. The music became quieter, and I caught the sounds of night, the rustle of wind in trees, a distant dog barking, the hum of street lamps, and his footsteps, soft, rhythmic, constant. I quickened my pace. My heart started beating slightly faster, though my mind said it was silly. Just a coincidence. Just a person walking in the same direction. But he quickened his pace too. I walked another block without looking back, told myself I wouldn't be paranoid. But my peripheral vision kept tracking his figure on the other side of the street. Always there, always at the same distance. Ahead was a traffic light. Red signal for pedestrians. I stopped, pretending to check my phone. My fingers trembled as I unlocked the screen. The man stopped too. Directly across from me, across the road. Standing motionless under a flickering orange street lamp that someone had decorated with plastic bats. Shadows from the bats danced on the asphalt. I didn't look at him directly, just from the corner of my eye. A tall silhouette in a black hoodie, hood pulled over his face, hands in pockets, completely motionless. The light turned green. I walked. He walked. Panic began rising in my throat, but I swallowed it down. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe he lived on my street, and I just never noticed him before. I decided to test it. Ahead was a side street, not my usual route. I turned right, changing my path. If he was going home, he'd continue straight. If he was following me, I walked half a block and looked back. He had turned after me, still on the other side of the street, still at the same distance. But now there was no doubt. He was following me. My breathing quickened. I removed the second earbud, shoved the phone in my pocket. I needed to stay focused. I needed to think. 24-hour store. On the corner of the next block was a 24-hour store. There would be people, light, cameras. I could go in there, ask them to call a taxi or the police. I headed there, quickening my step. My sneakers slapped against the sidewalk, the sound seeming too loud in the night silence. His footsteps didn't change, still the same soft, constant rhythm, like a metronome. The store was ahead, across the street. Bright, fluorescent lights shone through the windows. I could see the cashier's figure behind the counter, bent over his phone. I started crossing the street without waiting for the light. No cars? Just me, and he started crossing too. Not parallel, not to his side, straight toward me. Diagonally across the empty street, directly intercepting my path. I froze in the middle of the road. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my muscles wouldn't obey. I just stood there, watching him approach, and for the first time I saw his face. A street lamp illuminated him directly. Orange light from the Halloween decoration. An artificial pumpkin wrapped around the post. Colored everything the shade of pumpkin flesh. The hood partially hid the upper part of his face, but I could see the lower part clearly. He was smiling. Not a normal smile. Not friendly, not polite, not the drunk smile of someone returning from a party. This was a smile stretched from ear to ear, unnaturally wide, as if the facial muscles were frozen in this position. Teeth bared, all of them, from front to back. Lips pulled so tight that the skin at the corners of his mouth seemed white. And the eyes weren't smiling. They were empty, wide open, unblinking. Just two dark holes under the hood, staring straight at me. He didn't make a sound, didn't say a word, just kept walking toward me with that terrible smile stretched across his face like a mask. Something inside me broke. The survival instinct that had been silent for these few minutes suddenly screamed. Adrenaline flooded my bloodstream. I turned and ran, not to the store. Home. I knew the way home. I could get there faster than to any public place. 3 blocks. I could run 3 blocks. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Not fast, not running, just slightly faster than before. The same soft, rhythmic steps, now quickened. He wasn't rushing. He knew I'd tire. Knew that sooner or later I'd slow down. I ran down the center of the street where the light was brighter. Past houses decorated for Halloween. A skeleton dangling from a tree swayed in the wind. A plastic witch on a broom attached to a fence. Tombstones on a lawn with inscriptions like R.I.P. and Here Lies Someone. It all flashed by like a nightmare. The footsteps behind didn't fall back. Constant, relentless. I didn't look back. Didn't want to see how close he'd gotten. Didn't want to see that smile again. My lungs burned. My heart pounded so hard I felt my pulse in my temples, in my throat, in my fingertips. 1 block, 2. My house appeared ahead. A small 2-story townhouse with a red door. I'd never been so glad to see it. I ran into the yard, jumping over the low hedge. My hand dove into my pocket for keys. Fingers found cold metal. The footsteps behind got closer. I reached the door, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the lock. Once, twice. Finally, the key went in, turned. The door opened. I flew inside, spun around, slammed the door so hard the frame shook. Fingers twisted the lock, slid the bolt, clicked the chain. Then I leaned my back against the door, slid to the floor, and tried to catch my breath. A minute passed. 2. My breathing gradually slowed. My heart still pounded, but not as frantically. Maybe I'd lost him. Maybe he ran on when I disappeared into the house. Maybe he wasn't even dangerous. Just some drunk idiot in a costume who thought scaring a random passerby was a funny Halloween idea. Maybe. I stood on shaky legs, walked to the living room window. The curtains were drawn. I carefully parted the edge, looked out at the street, and saw him. He was standing on the sidewalk, directly across from my house. Under a street lamp, in a circle of orange light, hands still in pockets, hood still pulled over his face, and the smile, that terrible, unnatural smile, was still there. He was looking straight at my window, just standing and watching. I let go of the curtain, stepped back from the window. My phone. I needed to call the police. My fingers trembled as I dialed 911. Ring. Second ring. Third. The operator answered. Female voice. Calm. Professional. I tried to explain the situation, but the words came out jumbled. Man. Followed me. Standing outside. Won't leave. The operator asked questions. Address? Description of suspect? Did he threaten me? Try to enter? Number. He was just standing there, just watching. She said she'd send a patrol car. Told me to stay inside, not open the door to anyone except police. I hung up and returned to the window. He was still there. I don't know how much time passed. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe 20. Time stretched, became viscous and slow. He didn't move, didn't even shift, like a statue, like one of those plastic mannequins people put on lawns for Halloween, dressed in sheets and masks. But this wasn't a mannequin. I could see his head occasionally tilt slightly, as if he was examining my house, studying the windows, memorizing the layout. Red and blue lights appeared at the edge of the street. A patrol car slowly drove down the street, searchlight illuminating houses in turn. The moment police lights became visible, the man moved. He didn't run, didn't hurry. He just turned, slowly, smoothly, and walked away, in the opposite direction from the police car, between houses into a narrow passage between two buildings where streetlight didn't reach, and disappeared, simply dissolved into darkness as if he'd never been there. The patrol car stopped in front of my house. 2 officers got out, looked around, seeing no one suspicious. One approached my door and knocked. I opened the door, keeping the chain fastened. The officer showed his badge. I let him in. There were 2 of them, a middle-aged man with graying temples and a young woman with dark hair pulled into a tight ponytail. They came in, surveyed the living room, asked standard questions about my safety. I told them everything. The route from the hospital, the man who followed me, the chase, the smile, how he stood outside watching. The female officer wrote everything in a notebook. The man listened carefully, his face remaining neutral, professional. Then he asked me to describe the man. Height, build, clothing, distinguishing features. I described everything I remembered. Tall, thin, black hoodie. And the smile. That terrible, stretched smile. The officer frowned. He exchanged a glance with his partner. Something in his expression changed. Alertness, recognition. He took a tablet from his pocket, scrolled through several files, then turned the screen toward me. A photograph. A male face taken by surveillance camera. Blurry, grainy, but clear enough to make out features. A thin face, dark eyes, and a mouth, open in a wide, unnatural smile. My stomach twisted. It was him. The officer nodded, seeing my recognition. Then he began to explain. A series of attacks. Over the last 2 months, 5 women in this neighborhood and adjacent blocks. All returning home late at night. All walking alone. The pattern was the same. The perpetrator followed victims, studied their routes, memorized where they lived. Then, days or weeks later, attacked. Usually near their homes when they opened the door. 3 women were injured. 1 was in the hospital for a week. All the others were psychologically traumatized, afraid to leave their homes. Police knew about him, knew his method, but couldn't catch him. Surveillance cameras captured him several times, but the quality was poor. Witnesses gave descriptions, but they were vague. Tall man in dark clothes with a strange smile. It wasn't enough for identification. And the scariest part, now he knew where I lived. He'd seen my house, knew my address, knew I worked at the hospital, worked night shifts, came home at 3 a.m. I was the next potential victim on his list. The officers advised me not to walk alone, ask colleagues for rides or call a taxi, install additional locks, alarm, security cameras. They promised to increase patrols in the area, but we all knew it might not be enough. He was patient. He waited weeks, sometimes months before attacking. Police couldn't maintain increased patrols that long. Sooner or later, I'd be alone again. And he'd be waiting. The following weeks passed in a fog of fear and insomnia. I stopped walking home. Jennifer from work gave me rides every night. Sometimes I asked Mike, a surgical resident, if Jennifer was busy. I hated asking, hated feeling helpless, but I hated the idea of meeting him again even more. I installed additional locks on the doors. Deadbolt, bolt, reinforced chain, security camera above the front door that sent notifications to my phone at any movement. Changed my route. Even when someone drove me, I asked them to drop me off on different streets, sometimes a block from home, sometimes 2. Then I'd quickly walk home, looking back every few seconds. Sleep became impossible. I lay in bed, listening to every sound. The creak of the old house, the rustle of wind at the window, the neighbor's dog barking. Every sound could be him. I constantly checked windows, got up in the middle of the night, approached the curtains, looked out at the empty street. Shadows seemed threatening. Every tree, every mailbox, every parked car could hide him. The news didn't help. I checked it every day. Every morning, first thing I grabbed my phone, opened local news sites, searched for headlines. Suspect arrested in series of attacks. But that headline never came. Instead, there was other news. Regular city events, politics, weather, sports. Sometimes a brief note that police were continuing the investigation, that they were following several leads, that they asked neighborhood residents to be vigilant and report any suspicious activity. Empty words. Colleagues at work noticed the changes. I was distracted, nervous, jumped at sudden sounds. Jennifer once asked if everything was okay. I lied, said I was just tired. The truth was too scary to say aloud. The truth was that I felt his presence constantly, even when he wasn't nearby. Even safe at home, behind all the locks and cameras. The feeling of being watched never left me, as if invisible eyes were tracking my every movement. I started noticing things. Small things. Footprints in the snow near my house that led from the sidewalk to my window, then back. Too large to be mine, too deep to be from a cat or dog. Scratches on the bedroom window frame, fresh ones that weren't there before. As if someone tried to check how easily the window opened. The trash can I'd left closed was open in the morning. Someone had rummaged through it, looking for something. Maybe information about me. Documents with my name, envelopes with my address. Or maybe I was just going crazy. Maybe paranoia was eating me from inside, and I was seeing threats where there were none. But deep down, I knew. He hadn't forgotten me. He was still out there in the darkness, waiting for his moment. A month had passed since that Halloween night. November brought cold and early twilight. Halloween decorations disappeared from lawns, replaced by plywood turkeys and wreaths of autumn leaves. Thanksgiving was approaching. The attacks stopped. The last one was a week before my encounter with him. After that, nothing. Not one report in the news. Not one rumor. Police put forward a theory. Maybe the perpetrator left, moved to another city, another state. Maybe realized police attention became too strong and decided to lay low. Or maybe he was just waiting. The detective handling the case, a man named Rodriguez, called me once. Asked if I'd noticed anything suspicious, if anyone was following me again. I told him about the footprints, the scratches, the trash can. He said he'd send a patrol to check the area. Advised installing cameras in the backyard too, not just at the front door. But in his voice, I heard what I felt myself. Helplessness. We couldn't catch a ghost, couldn't arrest a shadow. All we could do was wait. Wait until he made a mistake. Or until he attacked again. I started thinking about moving. Maybe to another neighborhood. Maybe to another city. Start over, where he wouldn't know where to find me. But part of me understood it wouldn't solve the problem. Because wherever I was, I'd always look over my shoulder. Always flinch at footsteps behind me. Always see his smile in every shadow. He wasn't just stalking me physically. He'd taken up residence in my head. It's early December now. 6 weeks have passed since that night. I still don't walk home alone. Still check locks 3 times. Still wake up in the middle of the night at the slightest sound. Detective Rodriguez called last week. Said the case remains open, but active investigation is suspended. Not enough leads, not enough evidence. The perpetrator vanished. But I know better. Last night I came home around 3:30. Jennifer dropped me off as usual. I got out of the car, waved goodbye, waited until she drove away. Then I quickly walked to my door, keys already in hand. And the moment I inserted the key in the lock, I felt it. The feeling of being watched. Cold ran down my spine. Hair on the back of my neck stood up. I turned around. The street was empty. No cars, no people. Just the orange glow of street lamps and long shadows from bare trees. But there, at the edge of visibility, where lamplight transitioned into darkness, a silhouette, tall, motionless, between 2 houses in the same place where he'd disappeared that night. I couldn't make out the face. The distance was too great, the lighting too dim. But I knew. I felt his gaze, felt that smile, even without seeing it. My hand trembled as I turned the key, opened the door, went inside, and locked up. I rushed to the window, looked out at the street, The silhouette was gone. Maybe it was never there. Maybe it was just a tree's shadow, a trick of light and darkness. My mind playing a cruel joke on me. Maybe. But when I checked the security camera in the morning, rewinding the recording to the moment of my return, I saw it. 1 second. 1 frame. A figure in the shot. At the edge of the camera's view. Too far to make out details, but close enough to see one thing. A white spot in the darkness of the face. A smile. Wide. Unnatural. Familiar. And then the figure stepped back into shadow and vanished. I saved the recording. Sent it to Detective Rodriguez. He said they'd look into it. But I know they won't find anything. They never find anything. Because he's a ghost. A shadow. A nightmare that comes at night and disappears with dawn. And the scariest part, I don't know when he'll return. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe in a week. Maybe in a month. But he will return. Because now this is a game for him. Cat and mouse. Predator and prey. He knows where I live. Knows my fear. Feeds on it. And all I can do is wait. Wait for that night when I look back and see him again. Closer than before. Wait for that moment when the locks on my door aren't strong enough. Wait for that second when the smile becomes the last thing I see. I'm telling this story now while I still can. While I'm still here. While I'm still breathing. Because if something happens to me, if one day I simply disappear, like the other women no one heard from again, I want someone to know. I want you to know. He's out there, in the darkness, waiting. The smiling man is real. And if you're ever walking home late at night and you feel someone following you, don't look back, just run. Run and don't stop. Because if you see that smile, wide, unnatural, dead, it'll be too late. He's chosen you, and he never lets go of his prey. Last night, when I went to bed, I heard a sound outside. Light, almost indistinguishable, as if someone was running fingers across the window glass. Slowly, gently, playfully. I didn't get up to check. Didn't look out the window. Just lay in the darkness, blanket pulled up to my chin, listening to that sound. The scratching continued for 5 minutes, then stopped. The silence was worse, because I knew he was still there, just waiting, smiling into the darkness. And someday, one of these nights, the window will open, the lock will break, the door will give way, and the smile will be the last thing I see. But until then, I keep living, keep working, keep breathing, because I have no choice. All I can do is wait, just like him.
Grandma Eleanor's house greeted us with the smell of mothballs, lavender sachets, and something else. Something sweet and musty, like old photographs. We moved in on October 31st at dusk, when the neighborhood kids were already running through the streets in monster and princess costumes. Sarah squeezed my hand as we stood in the hallway. Outside the windows, pumpkins glowed. Artificial ghosts swayed on trees. Our house was the only dark spot on the street. No decorations, darkened windows, an abandoned look. Grandma died in July. For 3 months, the house stood empty, and now that we'd moved in, it seemed too big, too quiet, too full of absence. The first day passed sorting through boxes. Sarah took on my childhood room on the second floor. Grandma had kept everything as it was. Books on shelves, faded posters, boxes of toys covered in a layer of dust. When Sarah came downstairs, she held a teddy bear in her hands. Teddy, worn, with rubbed brown fur, one glass eye, the other a sewn-on button, patches on the paws, made by Grandma's hand. I hadn't seen him in 20 years, but I recognized him instantly. I took him, and something rattled softly inside. An old talking toy mechanism. I remembered how, as a child, I'd press his belly and he'd say simple phrases in a child's voice. Hug me. I'm your friend. The batteries had long since died. But Grandma kept him. All these years. I placed Teddy on the mantelpiece next to Grandma's photograph. Her face looked out from an old snapshot. A smile, gray hair, kind eyes behind glasses. We went to bed late, exhausted. The house creaked around us, adjusting to new occupants. Old Victorian houses are always full of sounds. But that night there was one sound that shouldn't have been there. I woke to a voice. I didn't immediately understand where it was coming from. Quiet, female, elderly, coming from downstairs, from the living room. The clock showed 3:24. Sarah slept beside me, breathing evenly. I carefully got up, stepped onto the landing. The voice became clearer. Grandma Eleanor's voice. I went downstairs, heart pounding. The voice came from the fireplace, from Teddy. The bear sat motionless, but words came from him, crackling like an old recording. The voice told me to listen carefully, that Sarah wasn't who she seemed, that she was seeing Mark, my friend Mark, to check her phone, the messages. I would see the truth. I grabbed the bear. Something clicked inside. The voice cut off. My breathing was loud in the silence. This was impossible. The batteries were dead. This couldn't work. And it definitely wasn't Grandma's voice. She never recorded messages in a toy. But the voice was hers. I recognized the intonations, the breathing, the slight accent, and the words. Mark. My best friend since college. Sarah knew him. They saw each other at parties, but nothing more. At least I thought so. This had to be absurd. I returned to the bedroom. Sarah was still sleeping. Her phone lay on the nightstand, screen dark. I shouldn't do this. This was invasion of privacy. This was distrust. But my hand was already reaching for the phone. I knew the code. She never hid it. I unlocked it, opened messages, and saw the conversation with Mark. Dozens of messages. Over the last 2 weeks. Meet tomorrow at the same place. Yes, at 2. Alex mustn't know. Are you sure you can keep this secret? I'll manage. The main thing is he doesn't find out until the right moment. My stomach twisted. I kept scrolling. More messages, mentions of meetings. Found the perfect one, think he'll love it. How much will it cost? Don't worry about money, I'll handle it. The phone trembled in my hands. Sarah stirred, opened her eyes, saw me with her phone. Her voice was sleepy, but with notes of alarm, asking what I was doing. I lied badly. Said I heard a sound. Was checking if she was texting someone. The lie sounded false even to my ears. She sat up, extended her hand for the phone. I handed it over. She looked at the screen, saw the open conversation with Mark. Her face changed. She asked if I'd read her messages, if I'd spied on her. I said I needed to know. She explained then, frustration and hurt in her voice. It was a gift. My birthday was in 3 weeks. Mark was helping her choose a gift because I wanted a new camera lens and she didn't understand these things. That was the whole secret. She showed further messages, links to photo stores, lens specifications. Mark really was helping her choose. My face burned with shame. I apologized, said I didn't know what came over me. Sarah looked at me with a long gaze. Hurt. Disappointment. She asked what changed. I'd never checked her phone before. I couldn't tell her. Couldn't admit that a voice from a stuffed bear made me doubt her. She lay back down, turning away from me. Her goodnight was cold, final. I lay in the darkness, feeling an invisible wall fall between us. The next night, the voice returned. 3:24, exactly the same time. I wasn't sleeping anymore, was waiting for it. I went downstairs alone, didn't wake Sarah. Teddy sat on the shelf, illuminated by moonlight. Grandma's voice was clearer this time. It told me I hadn't listened. But there was something else. Sarah was taking money from my account, cash, large amounts. I should check the statement. Look at cash withdrawals for the last month. Ask myself where this money was going. The mechanism clicked, the voice cut off. I stood in the darkness, breathing fast. Money. Of course I check. Prove this was all nonsense. In the morning, while Sarah was in the shower, I logged into online banking. The statement for the last month showed 3 large cash withdrawals, $800 each, on different dates from different ATMs. I never withdrew cash. We use cards for everything. Sarah. It had to be Sarah. But why? She came out of the bathroom, hair wet, in a robe. I asked about the money, the withdrawals, $2,400 over the last month. Her eyes widened, asking how I knew, asking if I'd checked the accounts, asking what was happening to me. I told her to just answer. Did she withdraw it? She hesitated, then admitted yes, she had withdrawn it. I asked why. Sarah sighed, sat on the bed. She explained. My gift again. The lens was expensive. Mark had found a good option. But the seller only took cash. She was saving up so as not to touch our main budget. Wanted to make a surprise with her own money. I pointed out it was our joint account. She said technically yes, but she earned too. She had the right to manage money. Her voice became cold. She said I didn't trust her. After 10 years of marriage, I suddenly decided she was stealing from me, that she was lying, that she was cheating. I tried to deny it. She asked what was happening, why I'd changed. I couldn't answer, because the answer was insane, because my dead grandmother was talking to me through a stuffed toy. I said I needed time to think. I left the room, leaving her sitting on the bed, with hurt and bewilderment on her face. Third night, 3:24. I sat in the living room waiting. Teddy was in front of me on the coffee table. The voice came on time. It said I still didn't understand. That Sarah knew Grandma. That she'd been here before, in this house, before she met me. That she knew about the inheritance. She planned everything. I should find the box in the basement. Old photographs. I'd see her. Young, but it was her. Sarah had been lying to me from the very beginning. This time I didn't wait for the voice to finish. I grabbed the bear, tore the seam on his back, thrust my hand inside, felt the mechanism. Not an old box with a spring, a modern device, plastic with a blinking LED, Bluetooth speaker. Someone was speaking through it. In real time, I pulled out the device, removed the battery. It went dark. Silence filled the room. So it wasn't supernatural. It was a person. Someone who wanted to destroy my marriage. But the words about the photograph, was that a lie too? Only one way to find out. I went down to the basement. Old boxes piled in the corner, covered with cobwebs. I opened them one by one until I found a box labeled Photos 1990 to 2000. Inside were hundreds of photographs. Grandma, Grandpa, me at different ages, relatives. And one photograph made me freeze. A young woman about 20 standing on the porch of this house, next to Grandma about 30 years younger. Both smiling. The woman looked like Sarah. Very much like her. The same facial features, the same hair. I turned over the photo. On the back, in Grandma's handwriting, Elizabeth, volunteer from the hospital. 1998. Elizabeth, not Sarah. But the resemblance was frightening. I went upstairs. Sarah was already awake, sitting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee. I placed the photograph in front of her, asked her to explain. She looked at the photo, frowned, asked who it was. I told her to tell me. Sarah raised her eyes, bewilderment and fatigue in them. She said she didn't know who it was. It wasn't her. She was born in 88. In 98, she was 10 years old. And she'd never been in this house before we started dating. I said she looked like Sarah. Sarah replied that people looked like each other. That didn't mean they were the same person. She stood up, put the cup in the sink. She said she was tired of this, of accusations, of distrust, that I changed since we moved into this house. She didn't know what was happening, but it was destroying us. She went upstairs. I remained alone, staring at the photograph. The resemblance was striking, but Sarah was right. People looked alike. It wasn't proof. Someone was playing with me, using Grandma's voice, planting evidence that could be explained. But why? The answer came the next day. I installed a program to track Bluetooth devices. If someone tried to connect to the speaker again, which I left with the battery but hidden, I'd know where the signal came from. At 2:47 a.m., the program triggered. A device was trying to connect. The signal came from the street, the house across. I went to the window. The house was empty, listed for sale for months, but in a second-floor window, a bluish light flickered. A laptop screen. Someone was there. I woke Sarah, showed her the program. We dressed, went out onto the street. The back door of the empty house was ajar. Inside smelled of mold. We went up to the second floor to the room with a window facing our house. There was a camp there. Sleeping bag, thermos, boxes of food. Laptop on a folding table, voice synthesis program open on screen. Folders with audio files labeled Eleanor samples and voice model. And on the wall, photographs of us. Dozens of photographs taken through the window. Sarah pressed her hand to her mouth, asking who could be doing this. I checked the browser history on the laptop. Email was open. Emily Harrison, my sister. At that moment, we heard footsteps on the stairs. Emily entered the room, stopped when she saw us. Shock flashed across her face for a second, then rage. She said I wasn't supposed to find this. Her voice trembled. I asked what she was doing. She asked what she was doing. She was taking back what was hers. This house. Grandma had promised it to her. For years promised. And then I'd poisoned Grandma against her. Convinced her to leave everything to me. So yes, she decided to take it back. If she destroyed my marriage, I'd leave. Sell the house, and she'd buy it. As it should have been from the very beginning. She spoke quickly, words pouring out in a stream. She admitted using Grandma's voice, trying to make me think Sarah was deceiving me, and I'd almost believed it. She'd seen us arguing, seen how I looked at Sarah with suspicion. A little more and we would have split up. I said it was insane. She could have just talked to me. She laughed bitterly. We hadn't talked in 10 years. I'd cut her off, chosen Grandma's love over my sister. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but her eyes burned with fury. I was taking out my phone to call the police, but Emily saw it. She screamed no and rushed to the door, ran out of the room. We chased after her. Down the stairs, through the empty house, onto the street. Emily ran across the road toward our house or away from it. I couldn't tell. I shouted for her to stop. She turned around, tears streaming down her face, an expression of despair and madness. She screamed that I'd stolen everything from her. And at that moment, she stepped onto the roadway without looking. A car appeared from around the corner. Headlights illuminated her figure. The impact was dull, terrible. Emily was thrown several meters. She fell on the asphalt, motionless. I ran to her, screaming her name. Sarah was calling an ambulance, but when I reached her, I saw her eyes, open, motionless. She was dead. The funeral was 4 days later. Few people attended, a few distant relatives Emily knew better than I did. The lawyer, neighbors. Sarah held my hand the whole time. We didn't talk about what had happened, about the distrust, about the accusations, about how close we'd come to breaking up. All of it seemed unimportant now. Emily was buried next to Grandma and Mom, the family plot in the old cemetery. I stood at her grave looking at the fresh earth and felt emptiness. Not grief, not relief, just emptiness. We'd lost each other 10 years ago. Her death was just the final period in a story that had ended long ago. We returned home in the evening. The house was quiet, dark. I turned on the light only in the hallway. Sarah hugged me, saying she was sorry. Despite everything, Emily had been my sister. I said I knew. We went upstairs, undressed, got into bed, emotionally and physically exhausted.
Sarah fell asleep quickly. I lay in the darkness, listening to her breathing, staring at the ceiling. It was all over. Emily was dead. There would be no more voice. The clock on the nightstand showed 3:20. I closed my eyes, feeling exhaustion washing over me. And then I heard it. A voice. Not Grandma's voice, not a female voice at all. A child's voice, thin, singing, coming from downstairs. I sat up in bed, heart pounding. The voice was singing, a simple melody, a children's song. Emily sleeps in the cold, cold ground, in an oak coffin, dark and wet. The worms are crawling, they're hungry now. Emily's gone, she's dead, dead, dead. Alex is home, Alex alone. Sarah sleeps, but I'm awake. I'm always here, I've always been. I'm your friend, for goodness sake. The voice was cheerful, carefree. A child's voice singing about death and worms. I stood up, legs trembling. The speaker. I'd removed the battery. It couldn't work. But the voice continued. The song repeated, words echoing through the house. I went downstairs. The voice came from the living room. Teddy sat on the mantelpiece, where I'd left him. Torn seam, stuffing sticking out. And he was singing. Without a battery, without a speaker, just singing. I approached closer. One glass eye of the bear reflected moonlight. The second, the button, was dull, dead. And when I reached out to take him, the song cut off. Silence. The bear silent, motionless. But in the silence, I heard another sound. Breathing. Not mine. Not Sarah's upstairs. A third breath. In the room, very close, as if someone stood behind my shoulder. I slowly turned around. No one. Only shadows and moonlight. But the breathing continued. Soft, childlike. And then a whisper. So quiet I barely heard it. The words said I was his friend. That it would always be my friend.
Rain drummed against the windshield, turning the road into a blurred watercolor of gray and black. The wipers squeaked monotonously, in rhythm with my heartbeat. I hadn't been here in 20 years. 20 years I'd avoided this place, this house, these memories. But death has its way of bringing us back to where we ran from. Mom died a week ago. Quietly, in her sleep, just as she'd always wanted. I was the only heir, the only child, the only one left to sort through the fragments of her life. The house emerged from the fog like a ghost, gray, dilapidated. with peeling paint and boarded shutters. The garden Mom had once loved so much had turned into a jungle of weeds and dead rose bushes. I parked in the driveway where cracks in the asphalt resembled veins on an old man's hands. The key stuck in the lock. Rust and time had done their work. I shoved it with my shoulder, and the door opened with a plaintive creak, exhaling the air of the past into my face. The smell of old books, lavender that Mom used to place in closets, and something else. Something musty and forgotten. Inside, time had stopped. Furniture stood in the same places, covered with white sheets like shrouds. Photographs on the walls looked at me through dusty glass, me at different ages. Mom, Grandma, happy faces from a past that seemed so distant. I climbed the stairs, the steps creaking under my feet. Upstairs there were 3 doors: Mom's bedroom, the bathroom, and my old room. 25 years ago, when I was 10, something happened in that room that I could never explain. Something that haunted me in dreams, that made me wake up screaming once and never sleep in the dark again. I saw a boy without eyes. He sat on the edge of my bed, and where there should have been eyes, there were only empty black hollows. He held out a small box to me. I screamed. He vanished. Mom ran in, turned on the light, hugged me, told me it was just a nightmare, but it wasn't a nightmare. I knew it then. I know it now. I pushed open the door to my old room. It opened easily, as if it had been waiting for me. Inside, everything was untouched. Posters on the walls, faded and covered with dust. An old desk, a bed with a blue bedspread, my childhood time capsule. I dropped my bag on the floor and looked at my watch. 7 in the evening. Too late to start sorting through things. I decided to spend the night here and tackle the work in the morning. The hotel in town was half an hour away, and the idea of spending another hour on the road seemed unbearable. But first I needed to check Mom's room. The lawyers had mentioned some documents she kept. Mom's bedroom smelled of her perfume, Chanel number 5, which she'd worn all my life. The scent was faint, almost ghostly, but strong enough to take my breath away for a moment. I could almost imagine her here, sitting at her vanity, brushing her long gray hair. I began methodically opening drawers, papers, receipts, old letters. Nothing unusual. And then, in the bottom drawer of the dresser, under a stack of wool sweaters, I felt something solid, a wooden box, locked. The key was found in the jewelry box on the vanity, small brass with floral engraving. My hands trembled slightly as I inserted it into the lock. Inside lay a leather-bound diary. I opened it at random. Mom's handwriting, neat, slanted, filled the pages. The date on the first page made me freeze. March 15th, 1989, the year I was born. Today I found out I'm expecting twins, 2 boys. Dr. Grayson showed me the ultrasound, and I saw them both. So tiny, so perfect. Thomas and Daniel. I've already chosen the names. I can't breathe from happiness. The world around me tilted. Twins? I flipped further, my hands trembling harder. September 18th, 1989. They were born today. Daniel screamed immediately, loud and fierce. Thomas. Thomas was so quiet. Too quiet. The doctor said something was wrong with him. His heart, his lungs. They're doing everything they can. September 19th, 1989. Thomas is fighting. I held him today. So small, so fragile. Daniel is in the nursery, healthy and strong. Why is life so unfair? Why does one thrive while the other... September 21st, 1989. Thomas died today at 3:24 a.m. I was holding him when he left. His tiny fingers squeezed my finger, and then let go. I don't know how I'll survive this. I don't know how I'll be able to look at Daniel and not see Thomas, not see who he could have become. Tears rolled down my cheeks, falling on the yellowed pages. I had a brother, a twin brother, and I never knew. I continued reading, page after page of maternal pain. October 5th, 1989. I can't anymore. Every time I look at Daniel, I see Thomas. I see them together as it should have been. The doctor suggested therapy, but how can therapy bring back my son? November 12th, 1989. I've made a decision. I'll put away everything that reminds me of Thomas. All the photos, all his things, everything. I'll never tell Daniel. He shouldn't carry this pain. He shouldn't know that he was part of a whole that was torn in half. The last entry was dated on my first birthday. September 18th, 1990. Daniel is 1 year old today. He's so lively, so curious. He laughed today, and for a second I forgot that there should have been two of them. Maybe I made the right decision. Maybe with time the pain will subside. Maybe someday I'll be able to remember Thomas without this tearing pain in my chest. I closed the diary and clutched it in my hands, as if it were the last connection to the truth. My mother had lived her entire life with this secret, this pain. She carried it alone, never sharing, never letting me know. Why? To protect me? Or herself? Or I returned to the dresser and continued searching. In the very back corner of the drawer, I found an envelope. Inside was a single photograph, faded, the edges frayed, 2 infants in hospital cribs, side by side, both tiny, both in blue caps, one with open eyes, fists clenched, the other sleeping, so peaceful. On the back, Mom's handwriting, Daniel and Thomas. 3 days together, always in my heart. I don't know how long I sat there staring at this photograph, at the brother whose existence I'd never suspected, at that part of myself I'd lost before I even knew it existed. Night fell. The house plunged into darkness, and I, as if mesmerized, climbed the stairs back to my old room. I lay on the bed, still clutching the photograph in my hand, the diary on the nightstand. Sleep wouldn't come. Thoughts swirled, fragments of memories surfacing one after another. Strange moments from childhood that never made sense. How Mom would sometimes start crying for no reason, looking at me. How she avoided conversations about pregnancy, about childbirth. How she flinched when she saw twins on the street. Everything was coming together. All the pieces of a puzzle I didn't know existed. My mind kept returning to one question over and over. Did I know on some deep level? Did I feel this emptiness? This absence of a twin my entire life? The sense of incompleteness I could never explain? And then I heard it. A creak of a floorboard in the hallway. I froze. The house was old. Old houses creak. That was logic, common sense, a rational explanation. But then came another creak. Closer, slow, deliberate. Footsteps. Someone was walking down the hallway toward my door. My heart pounded so hard I felt my pulse in my temples. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my body refused to obey. The door to my room was ajar. I'd forgotten to close it. Through the gap, I could see the dark hallway, dimly lit by moonlight from the window at the end of the hall. And then the door began to open, slowly. So slowly it seemed as if time itself had stretched. The temperature in the room dropped. I saw my breath, little clouds of vapor in the air. The cold burned my lungs with each inhale. The door stopped, fully open. There was no one in the doorway, but I felt the presence. Something was there, in the darkness, something watching. And then the edge of my bed sank, as if someone had sat on it. Exactly like 25 years ago. My mind screamed. Every cell in my body demanded I close my eyes, hide under the covers like a frightened child. But this time I couldn't. This time something had changed. I knew. Slowly, with effort that overcame all instinctive fear, I turned my head. He was sitting there, but this was no longer a child. This was a man my age, my height. He sat on the edge of my bed, translucent, as if woven from moonlight and mist. And he had no eyes. Where there should have been eyes, there were empty sockets, but not black, not frightening, as in my childhood memories. From them emanated a soft, pale blue glow, like fireflies on a summer night. He looked exactly like me. The same facial features, the same jawline, the same hair. It was like looking in a mirror that reflected a version of me from another life, from a life he never lived. In his hands was a small box, the same box he'd tried to give me 25 years ago. My throat went dry. The word escaped my lips in a barely audible whisper. Thomas. The figure slowly nodded. Tears poured from my eyes, hot, unstoppable. All the pain, all the anger, all the sorrow of the last few hours burst out in one crushing torrent. Thoughts raced chaotically. I didn't know about him. God, how could I not have known? Mother lived her whole life with this secret, and now she'd taken it with her to the grave. Almost taken it. Thomas slowly shook his head, as if saying everything was okay, as if forgiving years of ignorance. He held out the box again. This time his movement was unhurried, careful, not threatening, pleading. I looked at the box, then at him, at the brother I'd never known, at the part of myself I'd lost before I understood it existed. Slowly, I reached out my hand. His fingers were cold, but not icy. They were like a cool breeze on a summer night. He placed the box in my palm, and when our fingers touched, I felt something strange. An electric charge, a connection, recognition on a cellular level. I opened the box with trembling hands. Inside were 3 items. A tiny hospital bracelet, blue. It was printed, Boy Harrison, Thomas James, September 18th, 1989, September 21st, 1989. A lock of baby hair, light and soft, tied with a faded pink ribbon, and another photograph. In it, Mom held 2 infants, one in each arm. She was smiling, but there was sadness in her eyes. She already knew that one of us was leaving. The thought formed in my head clearly and distinctly. She wanted to forget. She thought it would be easier that way. For her, for me. But forgetting is impossible. You can only hide the pain so deep that it becomes part of you. Thomas didn't respond, but I felt his presence, warm despite the cold in the room, comforting. I looked up at him, and for the first time really looked at his face. Now that the initial shock had passed, I saw not horror, but beauty. He was a ghost, yes, but he was my brother. Understanding came in a wave. He'd been trying to give this to me all this time, 25 years ago. But I was scared, I screamed, and he left. And now he'd returned, because I finally knew the truth, because I was ready to accept it. He nodded, confirming my unspoken thoughts. Something broke inside me. All the walls I'd built, all the defense mechanisms that kept emotions under control. I cried, deep, chest-tearing sobs. Words poured out on their own, the need to speak them overwhelming. I was so sorry. Sorry that he'd lived only 3 days. Sorry that Mom couldn't bear the pain. Sorry that I'd never known him. Sorry that he'd been alone all these years. Thomas raised his hand, slowly, carefully, and touched my shoulder. His touch was light, almost weightless, but I felt it. Felt the comfort in it. And I understood. He hadn't been alone. He'd been with me, always. Memories flooded one after another. Moments from childhood when I felt someone watching me, but in a good way, protecting. Times when I should have been hurt, falling from a tree, nearly hit by a car. But something stopped me. Someone's warning, someone's presence. Nights when I dreamed of a boy who looked like me. We played together, laughed, talked. I always woke up feeling sad, but not understanding why. It was him, always him, my guardian angel, my lost half. Thomas smiled. For the first time, I saw a smile on his face, and it was beautiful. In the empty sockets, something warm and bright lit up. Love. Pure, unconditional, brotherly love. I laughed through tears and reached out to embrace him. My arms passed through his form, but I still felt him. The energy, the presence, the connection that had never broken, even when I didn't know it existed. Words of gratitude overwhelmed me. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for waiting until I was ready. Thank you for always being there. He began to fade. The glow around him grew brighter, absorbing his form. But this time it wasn't scary. This was right. This was release. I sat up straight, holding the box in my hands, a desperate desire to keep him washed over me. A little longer, just a little more time together. Thomas shook his head. His form became more and more transparent, dissolving into the moonlight. But he raised his hand, slowly, in a farewell gesture. I raised my hand, mirroring his movement. The last words I managed to whisper into the void. See you again, brother. And he vanished. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I sat on the bed, holding the box, looking at the photographs, rereading Mom's diary, crying, smiling, feeling. When the first rays of dawn penetrated the window, coloring the room in soft shades of pink and gold, I finally got up. My body was tired, but my mind was clear. For the first time in a long time, I felt whole, complete. I went downstairs and found old picture frames in the storage room. Spent the morning cleaning them of dust, inserting Thomas's photographs, his hospital photo, the picture of the two of us with Mom, his hospital bracelet I placed in a small glass frame. I hung them in the living room, next to my childhood photographs. Now we were together, as it should have been. The lawyer called toward evening, asking about my plans for the house, whether I would be selling it. The answer came easily and naturally. Number. The house would stay. I didn't know what I'd do with it. Maybe renovate. Maybe make it a place where family could gather. A museum of memory. Not just of Mom, but of Thomas. Of the boy who lived only 3 days, but whose love lasted a lifetime. That night I slept in my old room again, this time without fear. The box with Thomas's treasures stood on the nightstand, illuminated by soft moonlight. I didn't see him again. Not physically, but I felt him. In the warm breeze that ruffled the curtains. In the creak of floorboards that now sounded like a lullaby. In the sense of peace that enveloped the house. Before sleep, my lips formed words, releasing them into the darkness like a quiet prayer. Good night, Thomas. And I could have sworn I heard a whispered response. So quiet, it could have been mistaken for the rustle of wind. Words I'd been waiting for my whole life without knowing it. Good night, brother. I closed my eyes and smiled. Now I knew why I'd always felt that a part of me was missing. Why in a crowd I searched for a familiar face I could never find. Why in the mirror I sometimes saw the shadow of someone else looking at me from the other side. Thomas was finally home. We were both home.